Hi HipKit friends! I'm excited to be back with you to share another layout. Today I am focusing on using the Thankful Vibes cut file, and then I'm also trying to use the B-sides of the patterned paper from the main kit in the October kit. So by B side, I just mean the back sides of the patterned papers, and I have done that here by I cut 1.5 inch squares on my Cricut and they do have rounded corners. So I cut 3 squares, 1.5 inch squares out of 6 different patterned papers from that main kit using the B sides of those papers. And now I'm going to be lining those up, and I did put them in color order, rainbow order. So I've got a pink, an orange, a yellow, gold color, a green, a turquoise, and a purple. So what I was doing here is I was just adding some color to the background where those squares are going to go. So that first color I did was the Bahama Mama Inklings from the September color kit. And then I used watercolors that I just had in my stash for the other colors. And then the green color is Beach Glass Vibes, also a Shimmers product. So I just messily put those down on the background in rainbow order, and you saw I laid all of those squares down and kind of penciled in where I wanted them to go so that I would know where that color on the background needed to go. Here what I'm doing is I am adhering the layers of my cut file that I made. So I used the contour tool in Cricut to create that blue layer. That blue pattern paper is also a B-side of one of the papers. And then I used the orange layer, I used the offset tool to create a shadow. And then the white that I'm putting down on top, I actually used my Xyron sticker maker to adhere that white layer down just because it was so thin. The borders of it were so thin, so I didn't want to rip it or tear it accidentally. So I used that. The Xyron sticker maker makes that easier when you're dealing with some little teeny tiny pieces and parts. So I just have 3 layers on that cut file. And then this pumpkin is also from the same cut file. So this is the Thankful Vibes cut file. It is an October cut file, one of the HipKit Club exclusives. And I cut this pumpkin same layers. So I did a shadow layer. The blue this time is actually in the background instead of the foreground. So I did the blue in the background as the shadow using the offset tool, and then I cut it with the white. That's what you get when you download the cut file. And then the orange pieces are just I used the contour tool to create those pieces so that I could distress the edges of those. And then here what I'm doing is adding some hand stitching down the center so that I can bend up each of the pieces of that. So I didn't measure or anything like that for the holes. I just eyeballed them, tried to keep even spacing there so that my stitches were all the same size. And I went and poked some holes with my X-Acto knife, and then I used my dry embossing tool to make the holes a little bit bigger. And then I found this is a thread. It's actually a really cool kind of textile thread. It's like a piece of thread that has like gold thread wrapped around it. So I don't know what exactly that's called, but it's a really cool. It was in my stash there, and it matches that gold patterned paper really well. So I stitched the pumpkin, bent up the edges, and then what I'm doing with the patterned paper, the squares, the 1.5 inch squares that I cut, is I went and added craft foam to the back of each of those. So those are going to be popped up on the background. And I am adding wet adhesive and then dry adhesive and then a little bit of just a touch of wet adhesive to make sure that it adheres well to that shimmery background. So when you have something kind of shimmery or metallic on the background, sometimes it is hard to glue to it with a dry adhesive. So I was using both there. And then I am using my T-square ruler just to make sure I did the top row first, and now I'm going to do the bottom row, the purple layer. And sorry, it's off camera just a little bit, but I am trying to use the T-square ruler just to make sure that the top and bottom are in the same position on the paper. And then everything in between there is, I'm just going to try to evenly space it out. So my advice for this, I always do, anytime I'm doing something like this where I'm trying to line up all these pieces, I do the bottom layer and the top layer, and then I do the outside edges. I adhere those down, and then I go back and do the middle. So it just seems to be the easiest to make sure everything is straight. So you can see there, I'm going to do the left side of the blue. I'm going to do the left side of the green. So I'm going to do all that whole left side, and then I'll go and do the right side, and then I'll do the middle. Hopefully that makes sense. So I'm trying to keep them straight, and I'm just kind of eyeballing the width in between the rows to try to make sure that those are even. Oh, I lied. I'm doing the middles. Usually I do that, the left side and then the right side and then the middle. I don't know why I didn't do that here, but I do. You'll see that I end up having to go back and move a lot of those middle pieces. So I should have done what I normally do, which is the outside rows first. Sorry, my head's kind of getting there. I'm trying to eyeball and make sure they're straight when I'm putting them down. And you can see that I did do tone on tone. So the background, see here, I'm trying to fix them because I should have done those last. I'm doing tone on tone. So the patterned paper matches the color on the background. Trying to make sure they're all straight. And now I'm going to kind of decide where my photos are going to go. So these are more photos from Thanksgiving of last year. And there's a photo of my brother and me with my mom. And then a picture of my son and daughter with my mom. So it was like brother, sister, mom, brother, sister, grandmother. So I thought those two pictures looked cute together. And here I'm just playing around with where I want the photos to go in relation to the pumpkin and then the word thankful. And the cut file, I forgot to say this, it does have, the cut file is thankful vibes. So there is the word vibes. When you when you download the cut file, you have 3 parts. So the pumpkin, the thankful, and the vibes. I just didn't use the vibes part. I just used the pumpkin and thankful as my title. So I'm going to pop that pumpkin up so it's at the same level as the patterned paper on the background that I popped up. And I'm just ruffling those edges up. So when I did adhere the pieces down, but right before I sewed them, but I only did it adhesive down the center of each of those pieces in the pumpkin, so that when I added the hand stitching, then I'd be able to go back and bend up all those edges. So that adds great texture to the layout. So now I'm going to build up my photos, add some matting to those, and then I'm going to do a really very thin layer of white behind those. And then I'm going to start building my focal point for the layout, which is my photo with lots of layers of different pieces and parts from the collections. So the green is actually the only patterned paper where I used the front side of the patterned paper. Everything else on the layout that I used is the B side, so the back side of the patterns. But I needed a green to complete my rainbow, so I had to throw that in there. So here I'm going to use some chipboard frames. Those are on one of the embellishment or the chipboard sheets of chipboard pieces that coordinate with all of the beautiful things in these October kits. And then the yellow that you see, it's kind of sitting on top of the picture right now, that gold frame, that is cardstock, so it's just paper. And then I'm going to have the little tag. I do add a little square. That's a little trick. If you've watched my videos, you've seen me do lots of times. So on the right side, I added just a little piece of patterned paper. It looks like I've got another mat behind there, but it's really just one tiny little strip of paper that I added to the right edge. Then I'm going to add a little tag behind there as well. And I am kind of gluing the layers as I go, but I'm not adhering the whole thing down yet because I am going to add craft foam behind. Before I glue it all the way down, I'm going to add some craft foam back behind there. Needed to move that down a little bit. So I adjusted that. I didn't want to cover up my pumpkin completely with all of my matting behind my photo, so I needed to move it down just a touch. And I did distress the edges of the layers, everything except the chipboard frames. I didn't distress those. I left those as is. But all of the paper that I add behind there and the tags and all of the other layers, I distress the edges with the Tim Holtz edge distresser. So here I am adding some gold threading through that little tag piece that's hiding, that's poking out. Add one more chipboard frame over there. And you did see me cut off the part that would be behind the photos and that matting so that I can save it and use it on the other side. I could have done that with that blue frame that I have on the background as well, but didn't think of it when I was making the page. So the other half of that frame I use over there on the left. And here's where I'm going to add the craft foam behind all of those layers to pop those up. I do 2 layers of craft foam over on that right side because I want it to sit at the same level as the left side, and that left side is on top of those patterned papers that I had popped up on craft foam. So I had a double layer on the right side to make all of that even at one level, sorry. So around this cut file, because the light blue was very light and the white was light, I went and added just some, with a brown Sharpie, some little dash marks around to, it kind of looks like threading when you look at it in the photo, but I wanted it to help it stand out from, like, so that you could read the letters more easily. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm adding just a little chipboard piece down there at the bottom. That's from the chipboard sheet that's from the embellishment kit. So I think everything that I used on this layout is from the main kit and embellishment kit. And before I joined the design team, I have been a HipKit subscriber forever, and I always subscribed and ordered the main kit and embellishment kit. That's what I always purchased, and those are my 2 favorite. Even still, now that I get all of them, I still love the main kit and embellishment kit. Those are my 2 favorites, for sure. Well, okay, I say that. I also love the color kit a lot, but they're all beautiful. But those are, I find myself, I tend to gravitate towards those because there's just so many beautiful pieces and parts in those kits. Adding some embellishments up around the pumpkin. So I did in that embellishment kit, there's this whole set that you see kind of laying on the left side of the screen right now. So those are all foil flowers and fruits and different things. Like you could make a beautiful cornucopia with it for Thanksgiving. It's bountiful. Definitely feels bountiful with all of those little pieces and parts, but they're all gold foiled. So it adds a great shimmer and shine to your layout. And I did add lots of pumpkins. So I repeated the pumpkins that are like from the cut file, and then in the embellishments, I added lots of different little pumpkins. So there's a little turquoise one there and an orange one, and I'm going to add a gold one here in a minute. So I love to repeat elements. That helps tie your page together. And I'm adding some leaves. It's definitely a fall layout. I am bending up the edges of all of the leaves that I add. And I did trim off, I actually, this time, left some of that white border on some of these pieces, just because it's so beautiful with the gold foiling. I couldn't bear to cut I couldn't bear to cut it off. So on some of the pieces, I left the white border, and then some I did trim off, just depending on how it looked layered together. So there's some beautiful things in these kits. I had a hard time stopping on this layout because I just kept wanting to add more and more. So you'll see it's lots and lots of layers of things. But I am keeping all of those many layers of things pretty tight around the photo because I want the photo to still be the thing that stands out and that word thankful. So I'm centering everything around the cut file and the photo. And it does help me when I'm creating a layout, because I do love to add lots and lots of layers. It does help me to adhere down my big things, so like the big elements. So on this layout, for example, the pattern paper on the background, those squares were kind of the main layer of the layout. And then I adhered down the photos, the title, and that big pumpkin. So then it made it easier for me to go back and tuck in the little pieces and parts that I wanted to add and see how they were going to look. Some people create their whole layout without ever adhering anything down and then take everything off and redo it. I am not, so I cannot do that. So that does not work for me at all. I've tried it because sometimes it would be easier. Sometimes I do find that I have to, pull things up that I've already adhered down. But I can't work with all of this stuff moving all over me, all around. So I always tend to glue down the big things, the big elements of my page, and then add and tuck in and include lots of little pieces and parts around that. And that's my process. That's helpful for me. And I'm able to see what I like as I go, like how everything is looking as I go. And you'll see I pick it up and look at it straight on and make sure I'm liking how it's looking. Sometimes it's hard when you're working on a flat surface to see how the page is going to look like when you're turning it in a book. So I do pick it up and look at it and see how it looks straight on. And to check and see where I need to add little pieces. And I love finding little places to tuck things, to tuck more embellishments. This is my favorite part of the whole thing. Usually the background, if I'm doing mixed media, the background and then the embellishments are my two favorite parts of creating the layout. Every layout. I really wanted to use that sunflower chipboard piece, but it was too dark. That navy was too dark. And I do add wet adhesive usually always behind stickers. So anything that's a sticker, I will say that in the hip kits, any of the pages of frames or the chipboard pieces, they're usually like industrial strength adhesive. You probably don't need to add any adhesive behind those, but any of the other stickers, I usually always add wet glue, because I find if I don't, when I go back and I'm turning pages in my scrapbooks, things have fallen off over the years if I don't glue it down. Did add a few little buttons over there on the right side. That's what I'm tying the thread into. So those are chipboard buttons. Those were also from the embellishment kit. I'm getting really close to the end here. And there is the finished layout. So I thank you for watching the process, and hope you will subscribe to the Hip Kit channel and tap the bell if you'd like notifications. We post a new YouTube video every day, and I will also have links down in the details for getting to the kits, where to purchase those, and how to subscribe. Hope you guys have an awesome day. Bye.